Let's begin here, because too many people mistake endless giving for true devotion. They believe the more they pour themselves out, the more love will last. Yet the opposite often unfolds. The heart remembers not the one who bent over backward, but the one who quietly set a line and stood within it. A woman who knows when to say no is not cold. She is unforgettable. Her presence lingers longer than those who always said yes, because self-respect leaves a deeper imprint than sacrifice. Boundaries are not walls against love. They are the soil in which love takes root. What endures is not exhaustion, but dignity. Before I continue, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And if reflections like this resonate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Many confuse rejection with cruelty, but in truth, rejection is often protection. It is the soul saying, "This does not belong to me." Carl Jung once observed that we spend much of life wearing masks to please others, while the deeper self waits in silence. When a woman sets limits in love, she is removing the mask of compliance. She is letting the authentic self step forward. Think of the contrast. One path is constant accommodation, answering every call, solving every problem, carrying what is not yours to carry. That path breeds dependency, and dependency erodes respect. The other path is measured strength, offering care, without erasing yourself, standing present, without surrendering your own ground. That path breeds growth, and growth deepens respect. The misunderstanding is simple, but costly. People believe giving everything ensures closeness, when in reality it often breeds indifference. What begins as appreciation can turn into expectation, and expectation can harden into neglect. Love that is carried by one alone soon collapses. Jung called individuation the journey of becoming whole, not half of another, but a complete self who can walk beside another. Boundaries are the outer shape of this wholeness. They say, "I am here with you, but I am also here with myself." True companionship flows from that balance. And so the lesson of this beginning is clear. The women most deeply remembered are not those who dissolved into care, but those who stood quietly in their own center. Their no became a gift, the reminder that love is not possession, but partnership. Love often begins with gestures of kindness. We cook a meal check if someone has eaten, remind them of an appointment, or ease a small worry. At first, this feels natural. Care is one of love's first languages, but slowly, almost without noticing, something shifts. The impulse to nurture expands into duty, and duty hardens into expectation. What once was affection begins to resemble a contract signed without words. This is the first fracture, the place where many women discover an unsettling question. Am I a partner here, or am I becoming a mother once again? It is a quiet wound that does not appear in a single moment, but grows through repetition. Each act of over-careful giving lays another brick until intimacy is overshadowed by dependency. From a Jungian view, this is where the persona, the mask of the ever-giving, endlessly patient woman, begins to overtake the self. Outwardly, she appears devoted and strong. Inwardly, the shadow gathers fatigue, resentment, and the subtle fear of being unseen. She becomes the caretaker because that is the role expected of her. But beneath that mask, her own needs recede into silence. Consider the psychological symbol here. In dreams, the figure of the mother often represents nourishment, safety, and unconditional presence. But when this archetype seeps into a romantic bond, it distorts love's balance. The partner becomes childlike, relying on her for structure while she drifts further from equality. True union requires two whole selves. When one regresses into dependence, the other is pushed into premature parenthood. The cost is not immediate. At first, he may say, "Without you, I could not manage." Those words sound like devotion, but they are really confessions of inertia. He learns that responsibility is optional because she will carry it. Over time, gratitude fades and indifference rises. He forgets birthdays, shrugs at effort, and assumes she will hold the center. Meanwhile, she wonders why her giving feels so thankless. Here is where the fracture deepens. She no longer feels chosen, she feels used. The man does not necessarily intend harm. Often he is unconscious of the imbalance. Yet unconsciousness is no excuse. Jung reminds us that what is left in the unconscious does not disappear. It governs behavior from the shadows. A man who refuses responsibility unconsciously demands to be mothered. A woman who accepts this role unconsciously consents to be diminished. This pattern is common in later life as well as in youth. Many women, especially those who spent years raising children, find themselves slipping back into the familiar rhythm of caretaking. It feels natural at first, but soon the inner voice protests. I did not come here to raise another son. I came here to walk beside a man. That voice is the self stirring awake. When the fracture appears, fatigue sets in. She notices that her energy is drained. Her patience is thin, and her laughter comes less often. She feels herself shrinking. What she hoped would be partnership is slowly turning into management. The romantic flame weakens under the weight of obligation. Psychologically, this is the moment when eros, the energy of mutual attraction, collapses under archetypal confusion. The man projects his inner mother onto her seeking comfort without responsibility. She, in turn, hides behind the persona of the good partner who never complains. Both remain trapped in a play of masks. The child within him refuses to grow, and the woman within her is denied her fullness. The wound here is subtle, yet profound. It is the wound of invisibility. To be loved as a mother is not the same as to be loved as a woman. The former demands sacrifice. The latter calls for recognition. One feeds dependency, the other fosters respect. Without that distinction, love erodes. This is why the first fracture matters. It teaches us that love without boundaries dissolves into roles that do not belong in romance. She becomes the nurse, the manager, the provider of order. He becomes passive, careless, indifferent. Each abandons their true self in favor of comfort and habit. From the standpoint of individuation, this fracture is an early summons. It whispers that growth cannot come through unconscious caretaking. To individuate is to see clearly, I am not your parent. I am not your rescuer. I am myself, and I stand as your equal. Only through this clarity can the relationship evolve into true companionship. It is tempting to ignore this wound. Many women push down their resentment, telling themselves it is normal. They say, this is just what love requires. Yet love does not require self-erasure. Love that demands the loss of identity is not love, but dependency. When one partner is carried entirely by the other, respect withers. Notice how memory works in such situations. A man may remember with fondness the woman who challenged him to grow. He rarely remembers with respect the woman who shielded him from every hardship. Dependency breeds forgetfulness. Growth breeds reverence. This is why boundaries, even when they appear as rejection, leave a lasting impression. The fracture, then, is not only relational, it is also inner. The woman herself feels the split between her persona and herself. Outwardly, she plays the devoted role. Inwardly, she feels the shadow rise. Anger, sadness, emptiness. To deny this shadow is to deny the truth of her own being. To face it is to begin healing. Jung once wrote that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off the shadow, but by integrating it. Here, integration means listening to that hidden voice that says, I am tired of being a mother when I long to be a partner. It means honoring that fatigue, recognizing it not as failure, but as wisdom. The first fracture is painful because it reveals an imbalance we would rather not see. Yet, it is also a gift, for it shows the path forward. It reminds us that partnership thrives not on endless sacrifice, but on mutual responsibility. She must ask, does he stand with me, or does he lean on me, as a child leans on a parent? His answer will reveal whether love can deepen, or whether it is destined to erode. In symbolic language, the first fracture is like a crack in a mirror. At first it seems small, but once noticed, it changes how everything is seen. The reflection is no longer whole. That crack cannot be ignored forever. One must either repair the mirror by restoring balance or accept that it will shatter under further strain. So the journey begins here at the threshold of awareness. The fracture between mothering and partnering marks the turning point where love either matures or decays. To see it clearly is already to step toward individuation. To ignore it is to repeat the pattern until exhaustion ends it. This is why the earliest act of wisdom in love is often the most difficult to resist the temptation of caretaking and to allow the other to carry his own weight. It feels harsh in the moment, but it is kindness in the long run. For in this refusal lies the possibility of genuine respect, and without respect, no love endures. And so we arrive at the essence of this second stage. Love begins in care, but it is not sustained by mothering. The true bond grows where both carry themselves, and where giving is an offering, not an obligation. The first fracture warns us that dependency, masquerading as affection, will always end in disappointment. But it also opens the door to deeper truth, that love remembered is love that fosters growth, not love that smothers it. The first fracture of love reveals itself when care turns into caretaking. Yet once it appears, many do not act. Instead, they put on a mask, hoping silence will protect what closeness remains. This mask may look like patience, devotion, or understanding. In truth, it is often resignation. The persona smiles while the shadow grows restless beneath. The persona is the image we show the world, agreeable, composed, untroubled. It tells others what they want to hear and hides the inner storm. Many women become masters of this mask. They nod politely, overlook repeated mistakes, and sacrifice their own needs to preserve harmony. Yet harmony built on denial is fragile. It cannot withstand time. The shadow waits in silence. It is the voice that whispers late at night, "I am exhausted. I am invisible. I am not being respected." Jung described the shadow as all that the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. In relationships, it appears as unspoken anger, hidden resentment, and the fear of being alone. When denied, it emerges indirectly through bitterness, withdrawal, or even illness of the body. We can see this struggle in common patterns. A woman forgives broken promises again and again, convincing herself it is not important. She hides her disappointment to avoid conflict. Another gives her body quickly, hoping it will secure affection, though her heart hesitates. Yet another loses her habits and passions to please, setting aside her solitude, her books, her voice. Each creates a mask to appear enough. Each silences her shadow to keep the peace. But peace without truth is no peace at all. The cost of such masks is heavy. Over time, the woman no longer recognizes herself. She has become what he wants or what she imagines he wants, while her authentic self fades into the background. The very qualities that once made her radiant, her voice, her rhythm, her passions grow dim. The irony is cruel. She changes everything to keep him, yet he withdraws when her essence disappears. This is the tragedy of the persona. It promises safety, but delivers emptiness. It allows her to be seen, but not for who she truly is. And because the self is hidden, respect diminishes. The shadow denied too long begins to rebel. It surfaces as sudden bursts of anger, deep melancholy, or the quiet conviction that she is unloved. At the core of this struggle is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear that no one else will come. Fear tells her to endure the lateness, the indifference, the careless words. Fear tells her to keep silent, to avoid confrontation, to pretend. Yet fear cannot be the foundation of love. Fear builds cages, not homes. Jung reminds us that what we resist does not vanish. It persists and often returns stronger. The shadow ignored in love will eventually force itself into view. If not spoken through words, it will speak through distance. If not faced in conversation, it will appear in dreams. If not integrated consciously, it will emerge unconsciously, shaping behavior in destructive ways. Here lies the deeper symbolism. To wear the persona too long is to live in exile from oneself. To deny the shadow is to deny half of the soul. Love becomes a stage where each plays a part, but neither truly meets the other. The man sees the mask, not the woman. The woman sees the role, not the partner. Intimacy never begins because authenticity is absent. We must also recognize the repeating cycle that develops. Silence is rewarded with neglect. The more she accepts, the less he offers. The less he offers, the more she doubts herself. And the more she doubts, the more she hides. This downward spiral leads not to union, but to emptiness. It is the pattern of slow disintegration. In symbolic terms, the woman becomes a shadow in her own home. She is present, but not felt. She is giving, but not cherished. She is there yet unseen. This invisibility is the deepest wound. To be in love, yet invisible, is to feel lonelier than being alone. Still, the mask persists because the persona seems easier than truth. To say, "This hurts me," feels dangerous. To say, "I need space," feels selfish. To say, "I will not accept this," feels cruel. And yet, without these words, nothing changes. The persona shields her from conflict, but it also shields her from intimacy. For intimacy cannot exist where the truth is silenced. The cost of silence is also carried in the body. Jung often noted that what the psyche refuses to express may appear as physical symptom. Fatigue, tension, restless sleep. These can be the body's way of carrying the shadow. The body remembers what the voice denies, and so the mask that once seemed protective becomes suffocating. It is like a heavy garment worn too long. At first, it feels warm. Later, it becomes unbearable. Yet many women cling to it, hoping endurance will one day bring respect. But endurance without truth never brings respect. It only deepens neglect. This inner battle between persona and shadow is universal. It is not limited to one age or one relationship. It is the human struggle to be accepted without losing oneself. For women, especially, in later years, the tension grows sharper. Having given so much to family, children, or partners, many fear there is no space left for their own soul. Yet, it is precisely here that individuation calls. Individuation is the process of becoming whole, of integrating the shadow into the conscious self. It means recognizing the hidden voice and allowing it to speak. It means removing the mask and showing the true face even if it trembles at first. Only then can the other see who stands before him. Only then can respect begin. This is the stage of confrontation. Not outwardly with the partner, but inwardly with oneself. The woman must face the shadow. She has avoided her anger, her sadness, her longing. She must ask, am I still myself? Or have I become a mask? Do I endure love? Or do I live love? These questions cannot be avoided forever. They rise like waves against the shore until answered. The persona will argue, whispering that silence is safer. But safety is not the same as life. A safe mask may protect the bond in appearance, but it kills it in essence. The shadow, if faced with honesty, can bring new strength. It is the hidden fire that says I deserve to be seen. I am not only what I give, I am also who I am. Here we arrive at the heart of part 3. The struggle between shadow and persona is the struggle between false harmony and true self. To remain behind the mask is to fade into invisibility. To face the shadow is to reclaim dignity. The cost of silence is high, but the reward of authenticity is immeasurable. This is not yet the awakening, but the threshold. It is the painful awareness that the mask no longer fits, that silence no longer protects, and that fear no longer serves. The shadow presses forward, demanding recognition. The persona begins to crack, unable to hold the weight of denial. The woman stands between two paths, one of repetition, the other of transformation. And so the story of love moves into its deeper stage. From the fracture of imbalance through the mask of endurance, the next step emerges the awakening. It is the moment when truth is finally spoken, when the shadow is no longer feared, and when love is tested not by comfort, but by clarity. Awakening rarely comes in a sudden burst of light. More often, it arrives quietly, like the first crack of dawn after a long night. A woman begins to notice what she once ignored. The words that wound, the gestures that dismiss, the imbalance that drains, she sees them without covering them with excuses. What she once endured silently now stands before her in sharp outline. This is the moment when the shadow long hidden steps into the circle of awareness. Instead of rejecting it, she begins to listen. The resentment she buried, the fatigue she silenced, the loneliness she carried even while partnered, these become guides instead of enemies. Jung often wrote that the shadow, when faced, honestly brings energy back to the soul. It is not only darkness, it is also the fire of truth. Here, the illusions begin to fall. She no longer believes that endless patience will create respect. She no longer confuses quick passion with lasting love. She no longer accepts that losing herself is the price of companionship. The awakening is simple yet profound. She remembers her own worth. She remembers that her voice matters, that her boundaries are not barriers, but invitations to real respect. Symbols help us understand this shift. Imagine a door that had always been locked. She carried the key without knowing it. When she faces the shadow, she discovers the key in her own hand. The lock opens not with violence, but with clarity. Behind it lies her true self, waiting patiently to return. This rediscovery is not pride or rebellion. It is individuation, the process of becoming whole. The awakening also brings new vision. She begins to see the difference between love and dependency. Love encourages growth, while dependency freezes it. Love respects boundaries, while dependency resents them. Love walks side by side, while dependency leans and clings. This vision clears the fog of fear. Where she once worried, if I say no, I will be abandoned, she now recognizes, if I cannot say no, I am already abandoned by myself. Patience takes on a new meaning here. No longer is patience the silence of endurance. It becomes the strength to wait until love reveals its true shape. A man who disappears when asked to wait was never present in the first place. A man who respects the pace of the heart shows his capacity for devotion. Waiting becomes a lamp that shows who is real and who is not. Speaking also takes new form. Instead of swallowing every slight, she names them with calm clarity. She does not shout or plead. She simply speaks. This behavior wounds me. This habit breaks trust. This is not acceptable. In doing so, she steps out from the mask of the persona and allows the authentic self to stand. Jung would say, the unconscious is becoming conscious. What was hidden in silence is now expressed in light. And remembering self becomes the final act of this stage. She recalls the small joys she once abandoned, the music she loved, The books she read, the solitude that restored her, the laughter that belonged to her alone. She reclaims these not as luxuries, but as essentials. In doing so, she regains her center. Her life is no longer measured only by what she gives, but also by what she is. This awakening does not guarantee that every relationship survives. In fact, some do not. When she waits, speaks, and remembers herself, some partners withdraw, unable to meet her truth. This, too, is part of awakening the recognition that not every bond is meant to endure. Yet what remains or arises after such clarity is of a different quality, love that breathes, not love that suffocates. We might call this the shift from false fire to steady flame. Rushed passion burns bright and dies quickly. Awakened love glows like a lamp, warm and lasting. It is not made of demands or fear, but of patience, respect, and truth. The woman who reaches this stage no longer seeks to be everything for another. She seeks instead to be wholly herself and to walk with one who can do the same. In dreams, such a shift might appear as light entering a darkened room, or as a long-lost friend returning with a gift. The meaning is the same. What was hidden is now seen. The self that was neglected has returned, carrying strength. To ignore this gift would be to fall back into repetition. To accept it is to step into transformation. Awakening does not mean the end of struggle. It means the beginning of choice. With clarity comes responsibility. She must decide how to live now that she knows the truth. Will she shrink back into silence, or will she honor her new awareness? The answer defines not only her relationship, but her soul's path toward individuation. In this stage, fear loses some of its hold. Fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of speaking truth. These no longer dominate. They may still whisper, but they no longer command. She sees them for what they are, shadows of the past, not rulers of the present. This shift gives her space to act with dignity, even if the outcome is uncertain. And so, the awakening marks the passage from survival to authenticity. She is no longer content to be remembered as the one who endured everything. She seeks instead to be remembered as the one who lived fully, who spoke truth, who waited for what was real. This is not defiance, but alignment, the inner self finally matching the outer life. Here, the path of individuation grows clearer. Integration of the shadow, the breaking of the persona, the return of authenticity. All of these converge in the awakening. She steps out of exile from herself and returns to the center. From that center, love can either grow deeper or be released, but in both cases, it is truer. This is why awakening matters. Without it, life repeats old cycles endlessly. With it, the cycles break, and something new can begin. The woman who awakens is not harder. She is softer and stronger at once. Softer because she can finally rest in herself. Stronger because she no longer bargains with her worth. Thus, part 4 closes with the image of renewal. A woman once hidden behind masks and wearied by caretaking now stands in her own light. She has waited. She has spoken. she has remembered herself. The shadow is no longer an enemy. It is a companion that pointed her back to her truth. And from this truth, she prepares for the next step to set boundaries, not in thought alone, but in action, to transform awakening into choice. Awakening brings clarity, but clarity without action remains unfinished. Awareness must take form in choice. This is the moment where a woman steps beyond inner recognition and begins to live her truth in practice. She no longer simply sees the patterns, she interrupts them. She no longer silently names the imbalance, she speaks and acts. This shift is decisive because it moves from thought to embodiment. Many people realize they are exhausted, overlooked, or diminished, but they continue unchanged. Transformation begins only when awareness becomes boundary, when insight becomes a standard lived out in daily choices. Boundaries are not punishments. They are declarations of worth. To say, "I will not carry your responsibilities," is not cruelty, but respect both for yourself and for the other. It allows him to grow, to stand, to be accountable. To say, "I will not give my body without trust," is not rejection, but reverence for the heart that deserves to be met before the flesh. To say, "I will not endure repeated wounds without response," is not harshness, but protection, the preservation of a love that could still deepen if it is honored. Symbolically, this moment is like drawing a circle around the self. Inside the circle lies dignity, energy, and authenticity. Outside the circle are demands, projections, and manipulations that no longer have power. Jung would describe this as individuation taking root in daily life. It is the psyche's truth, expressed in the language of action. The courage required here is immense. Boundaries always carry the risk of loss. A man may withdraw when told no. A friend may resist when met with limits. Yet the deeper danger is in never setting them at all. For to avoid boundaries out of fear is to lose yourself. And when the self is lost, no relationship can thrive. Consider how patterns shift once boundaries appear. A woman who once mothered now allows her partner to manage his own affairs. At first he may resist, but soon he must decide whether to grow or to fade. A woman who once gave her body too quickly now waits, and in that waiting, she sees clearly who values her soul and who merely sought distraction. A woman who once endured careless words now names them, and through that naming, she either invites respect or reveals indifference. In each case, the mask falls and reality emerges. Boundaries are also mirrors. They reflect to the other who you truly are and what you will no longer deny. Without them, the other relates only to the persona, the mask that endlessly accommodates. With them, the other must face the authentic self. Respect becomes possible because clarity leaves no room for illusion. Here, the shadow finds its rightful place. What was once hidden as resentment now appears as strength. The anger that burned in silence becomes the fuel for a firm enough. The loneliness, once masked by accommodation, becomes the reminder that being unseen in love is lonelier than being alone. The shadow is integrated, no longer feared, because it has given birth to new choices. This stage also marks a shift from fear to faith. Not faith in the other's behavior, but faith in life itself. A woman learns that saying no does not end love. It tests it. Real love grows stronger when faced with boundaries, while false love collapses under them. This trust allows her to release control and let outcomes reveal themselves. Symbols of transformation often appear in dreams during such times. A closed door that suddenly opens, a bird flying free from a cage, a river breaking through stone. Each carries the same meaning. What was trapped has found release. The psyche affirms that a new way of being has begun. Boundaries are not rigid walls. They are living lines that move with growth. What was once unacceptable may become acceptable with change, and what was once tolerated may no longer be. The essential point is not rigidity, but presence, being awake to what honors the soul and what diminishes it. This is also where solitude finds its rightful place. To set a boundary is to accept the possibility of standing alone. Yet solitude is not emptiness. It is a sanctuary where the self regathers strength. When a woman discovers she can endure solitude with dignity, she is no longer trapped by fear of abandonment. Love that remains is then freely chosen, not clung to in desperation. The paradox is clear. By risking loss, she gains respect. By withdrawing from dependency, she creates intimacy. By saying no, she makes room for a deeper yes. These are not strategies to manipulate another, but expressions of individuation. They declare, "I am whole." I invite you to walk beside me, but I do not disappear into you. In practical life, this may look like small acts repeated with consistency. Declining to rearrange her schedule for last-minute demands. Refusing to excuse words that wound. Taking time for her passions even when he does not share them. These are not dramatic confrontations, but steady choices that align outer life with inner truth. Over time, these choices reshape the relationship into one of balance or reveal that balance was never possible. It is important to remember that boundaries are not only about the other. They are also about oneself. A woman must not only say no to what harms, but also say yes to what nourishes. She must give herself permission to rest, to create, to be. Boundaries protect, but they also open space for joy. In Jungian terms, this stage is the embodiment of individuation in the realm of love. The self no longer hides behind masks or gives in to unconscious patterns. It stands, speaks, and acts. It allows both the light and the shadow to be lived consciously. This wholeness radiates outward, attracting respect, deepening intimacy, and filtering out those who cannot walk at the same depth. Thus, transformation is not a single act, but a posture of life. To live with boundaries is to live aligned with the soul. It is to accept that love is not sustained by sacrifice alone, but by the presence of two whole selves. In this way, the act of saying no becomes the doorway to a greater yes, the yes of love that endures because it is rooted in truth. And so, part 5 closes with the image of a threshold. On one side lies repetition, the familiar cycle of caretaking silence and invisibility. On the other lies transformation, the path of boundaries, dignity, and respect. Each woman must choose where she will stand. The choice is not easy, but it is necessary. For only through choice does love move from illusion into reality. When all the pieces are gathered, a single truth stands out. Love that endures is not built on constant sacrifice, nor on silence, nor on the hope that pleasing will secure devotion. What remains in memory are not the women who erased themselves, but the women who stood firm in their own center. They are remembered because their presence awakened growth, not dependency. The journey we traced together revealed the hidden pattern. Care without limits slips into caretaking. Masks of pleasing cover wounds but cannot heal them. Silence preserves appearances but steals intimacy. Only when the shadow is faced does truth emerge. Only when boundaries are set does love become real. This is not about hardness. It is about balance. To stand in yourself does not mean closing your heart. It means opening your heart without losing your voice. It means walking beside another as an equal, not carrying him as a child. Love is not meant to consume you, but to walk with you. Jung reminded us that individuation is the task of becoming whole. In love, individuation means we do not dissolve into another, nor do we demand that another dissolve into us. Each remains a self, strong and centered, and from that place, love flows freely. Two wholes meet not two halves clinging out of fear. Think of the symbols that speak to this truth. A flame that burns steady because it is protected, not smothered. A river that runs strong because its banks give it form. A tree that grows tall because its roots are deep. In each, the strength lies not in excess, but in balance. So it is with love. A woman who knows her worth does not need to demand respect with loud words or endless sacrifice. Her boundaries declare it quietly. Her presence carries it naturally. Her no is not rejection, but an invitation to real respect. Her yes is no longer a mask, but a gift given freely because it is chosen. The final lesson is clear love that respects both the self and the other will endure. Love that demands self-erasure will collapse. The soul knows this even when the mind resists. To live this truth is to step out of fear and into freedom. And so we close with this reflection. You will be remembered not for how much you endured, but for how deeply you lived. You will be remembered for the times you said no to what diminished you, and yes to what made you whole. In this way, love ceases to drain and begins to nourish. True companionship does not erase solitude, it honors it. True passion does not rush to consume it, waits and deepens. True devotion does not demand silence, it welcomes the voice. What endures is not dependency, but dignity. Not fear, but clarity. Not exhaustion, but peace. Remember this. The most unforgettable women are those who awaken others to grow. Their love is not a chain, but a mirror. Their presence does not smother, but strengthens. They walk beside, not behind. And in doing so, they embody the quiet power of individuation the fullness of a self who loves without losing herself. As you sit with these reflections, take a moment to ask yourself, what boundaries protect your dignity and what standards express your worth? Let that question guide you, not only in love, but in every bond of life. And now, before we end, I leave you with a gentle invitation. Share in the comments what part of this journey spoke most deeply to you. Was it the moment of awakening, the courage of saying no, or the peace of remembering self? Your reflection may be the light someone else needs to hear tonight.